If God is all-powerful, can we have free will? Short answer, yes. The first thing is to clarify that I'm not just talking about free will in the compatibilist sense of the word, used by people who try to reconcile free will with determinism. Compatibilists are people who think that we are free if we can do what we want to do, but maybe we are also determined because we only want to do one thing. And they tend to define free will more as being able to do what we want to do. But I'm talking about what's called libertarian free will. This is the idea that we have the ability to do or not do a thing. The next thing to clarify is that omnipotence, or God's being all-powerful, does not mean that God can violate the rules of logic. For example, by giving people free will, but also giving them no choices at all, no ability to not do anything they do. A lot of contemporary philosophers tend to recognize this as a reasonable limitation on omnipotence, or as just something omnipotence doesn't actually mean, a reasonable limitation on the definition of omnipotence. The classical answer, the thing you're more likely to find in medieval philosophers like Anselm or Aquinas, is that being able to violate the rules of logic would not be a strength but a weakness. So, of course, God, who is all-powerful or omnipotent, can't do that. Now, the fact that God's omnipotence does not mean that God has some ability to violate the rules of logic, does not mean that God's omnipotence is compatible with free will. It just means that omnipotence would either have to remove free will entirely or not at all. There's no halfway house where God gives us free will in the libertarian sense and still forces all of our decisions. So, does omnipotence mean we have no free will? The problem seems to be that we have some apparent conflict between God's sovereignty and human free will. The idea is that God can't have unlimited power without overruling free will, that our free will, if we have any, would put some limits on God's power. This is the problem, or the apparent problem, but to be frank, there really is no actual problem here. There never was. There's only the appearance of a problem. The illusion of a problem may come from the idea that free will places limits on God's power. Now, in a sense, that is true. If I'm actually making a particular decision with free will and the ability to do otherwise, then God cannot be forcing that decision. But let's look at the alternative theory. Just suppose that God's power really does destroy freedom. You know what that means? That means that God does not have the power to create us with free will. So either God lacks the ability to create beings with free will, or else God has that ability but lacks the ability to control some decisions we make freely. So, which ability does it make more sense to say that God does not have? On the one hand, there's the ability to force every single decision. On the other hand, there's the ability to create people with free will. Now, we could stop there. We could just say that the ability to create people with free will is way better than the ability to force every single decision. We could say that that is an ability worthy of God. And that's fine. I agree. But I think we can go a little deeper. On the one hand, the ability to force every single decision. On the other hand, the ability to create people with free will. Which ability does God have? Assuming God exists. We're talking hypothetically here for the atheist out there. Why is the ability to create people with free will better? It's because people like that are worth creating. It's a better universe if God made it to include people with free will. That means people with moral responsibility and people who can cultivate creation in God's name with creativity. There's no creativity if everything you do is fixed, if there's no ability to choose between doing one thing and not doing it and doing something else instead. Creativity requires free will in the libertarian sense. So the ability, the divine ability to create people with free will means the ability to create a universe that has people who are worth creating because they have moral responsibility and the ability to cultivate creation in God's name with creativity. In other words, it means the ability to make what the Bible and the Abrahamic religions more generally say we human beings actually are, the image of God. But what about that other ability, the ability to control every decision? That would be an ability to, it would be God's supposed ability to destroy free will. But if free will is a good thing, then this isn't much of an ability, is it? If you want to think like contemporary philosophers, I suggest you go ahead and do so. just state that the ability to destroy free will is the ability to do a kind of harm, and the inability to do harm is a reasonable limitation on the idea of God's omnipotence. But if you want to think in a way that I think is a little bit more wise, try thinking like Anselm and Aquinas. The ability to destroy free will is the ability to do a kind of harm, and that makes that particular ability a weakness, not a strength. That is why we can have free will, even if God is all-powerful. That is why we can have free will, because God is all-powerful. Thanks for watching.